The first thing I want to talk about is personal, which is I want to tell the story about how I was told about my father's death. And the story is this. My favorite aunt, Miriam was her name, came to my school one morning and took me out of school and started walking me home. On the way home, she took me on an unusual route, not the one that I took. And we stopped, and I remember exactly the spot where we stopped. And she stopped and said, Moishale, that was my name to her. I was 10, Moishale, you know, from now on you'll have to be strong because your father died and you'll have to look after your mother. End of sentence. I don't remember what was said before, what was said afterwards, but that part I remember every word. I hear the voice and I can see the location where it was. For many years I kept it just to myself. I don't know what I thought of it. What I do know is that I remember it with great clarity. Then I became a psychologist and started thinking about it, and I realized that probably no textbook of psychology would recommend that as the best way to break the news to a 10-year-old boy. And eventually also I started sharing it with important people in my life and so on, and processed the information. But with the passage of the years, as I became a family therapist and started also thinking about context, I started rethinking what she told me. To a point where I thought, given the context, the social context, the circumstances at the time, the circumstances in Israel, it was 1949, 4 years after the end of the Holocaust, just the end of the War of Independence. Her circumstances, my family's circumstances, I thought maybe that was an appropriate or certainly an understandable way for her to break to me the news. Also, I thought, of all the people in my family, I don't know if she volunteered or she was chosen, a bit of both, to be the one who will break me the news. Why? She, to begin with, was the only adult in my life who spoke Hebrew without an accent. She was an educated woman, she was a teacher, and I had a very close relationship with her. But she accepted a task that is not exactly something that anybody looks forward to having. Years passed, and probably about 50 years after the event, I decided that I wanted to talk to her about her experience and her memory of it. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what I want to say to her, how I should say it. The key thing for me was I did not want in any way to make her feel guilty or wrong. I loved her, we had a very close relationship, and to make her feel guilty was the last thing that I wanted. I dreaded that, and that delayed the time that I spoke to her. And I thought, when would be the best time, when would be the best place, how to talk to her. Eventually, I initiated that conversation. And of all the numerous scenarios that I had in my mind of how the conversation is going to unfold, the one that happened never occurred to me. She simply said, I don't remember. She was an aunt who had the most phenomenal memory of anybody I just about ever knew. And she was very proud of her memory. Yet, I imagine, no matter how rich and complex and painful your life is, it's not that often that you have to tell a 10-year-old that he lost his father. But that's what she said, and that was the end of that conversation.
But it sounds like it was something that stayed with you
Yeah.
more than 50 years till you had that discussion with her, and it was a very powerful force in your life.
And that's the issue now. That was between me and my auntie. The rest is between me and me. And what's between me and me? It raises for me about 4 questions. The first question is this. Maybe she was right. How do I know? It's simply one of those things you do not know. I remember it with great clarity. I believe in any way that you can that I remember it with great clarity, and I am sure that it happened. But I'm also a family therapist, and the number of times that it happens in front of me in this room, that you have 2 people who were involved in the same event, and they have totally different versions, or argue it took place and it didn't take place. So I just want to say that's the first thing. The second comment to make is, maybe I'll look at my note here because I wrote. Yeah, and that's the one that you were raising, Pauline, namely, did it really shape me? The way I think of it is, it's an event that influenced me profoundly. However, as a good, well-trained psychologist, I cannot help but also think, is it possible that even though if it took place, that I attributed to it, it was retrospective, that I chose it as the story, the metaphor, the myth, that how to understand my life, which is, again, humanly possible. Myself, my solution, my answer to that question is, it's probably a bit of both. That it shaped me in itself, but it was also became a metaphor for many other things. To give an example, shortly after my father died in this event, I joined HaShomer HaTzair in Israel. Do you know how HaShomer HaTzair greet each other? We greet each other with the biblical saying, Chazak ve'ematz, which means be strong and of good courage. As a side thing, maybe I should make a comment here. The English translation is a problem as far as I'm concerned. In English it is be strong and of good courage. It's interesting that in Hebrew it is be strong and courageous. In other words, the Hebrew assumes, that's the way I understand it, the Bible assumes that there is no bad courage. The only courage is a good one. In English, once you say, and of good courage, immediately it suggests the possibility that there is a courage that is not good. And I think there is a profound meaning behind it, and I may come back to it. Anyhow, so what was my training in, what happened in Hashi, in HaShomer HaTzair? For example, as soon as I joined, we had night activity, which was called courage activities. What was courage activity? We had to walk at night individually to walk to the Muslim cemetery, which was at the north of Tel Aviv. And that's how we developed our courage. And then they took us on hikes. And the hikes were designed to make us strong, to forge, to strengthen our character. How did they do that? For example, there was a water discipline. So we would walk in the desert without water to get us strong. So what I'm saying is that the way my auntie spoke was part of the world in which I grew up.
Well, it is a Sabra
part
culture.
Part of my influence. They made us tough, or tried to. The third question for me now is, that's after close to 70 years of reflection on what she said to me, even regardless of context, was it really a bad thing to say? Or was it a good thing to say to anyone in time of pain and distress and catastrophe even, to be strong and to be courageous? Maybe it's appropriate thing to say at any stage. Our listeners would not see your face, Pauline.
Well,
you are saying
I'm not so sure.
You are not so sure. And I'm saying too, I'm not so sure, but I'm not so sure that my attitude of my 20s, that it was an unfortunate thing to say, I'm not sure that it was. And the last question I want to raise about it is this, is what I'm telling that story. It's a very important personal story, but has it got anything to do with the Holocaust? Is it relevant to the Holocaust? Now, in England, they also told kids to be strong and tough. In Australia, they did it. So maybe it's not to do with the Holocaust. I think, personally, that it dominated my aunt's way of being in the world, the culture in which we both lived, and one of the lessons of the Holocaust for most survivors and for those who have been influenced by the Holocaust is our need to be strong as it were. So to me it is relevant, but I'm saying it's a very legitimate question to what extent that story is relevant or not to the Holocaust. And I decided to include it because all those questions are the questions that I, also as a clinician, often ask when I'm told by somebody about their current difficulties or their current way of being in the world and relate it to an event from their past. To what, is it relevant to the Holocaust? Is it not? Did it become a metaphor for their life, but it wasn't really, etc.?